Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. I hope you guys have been enjoying some of the more recent content. I've been lately been more available, so been just putting out a couple of videos here and there. So hopefully you guys are enjoying some of the more consistent lines of content. But we're back with another topic video for today, and this one's interesting to me because this is probably gonna go over a lot of people's heads just because they're not thinking this way. I mean, obviously, if you are, if you view this channel, it sounds weird to say just because it's like, I, it's mainly just me, but whatever. But if you do tune into the channel, I guess it sounds weird to say that. You would know that, this channel is more fleshed out in terms of conversations of film. We don't just keep it specifically to the movies. I like to talk about the business side of things, how it affects films, and ultimately how we end up with either the products that we have or the financial investments that are there. And some of the business decisions that also affect the line of work, all within companies and productions. And to me, that stuff is interesting because it informs a lot of the production itself to some extent and kind of bleeds into the storytelling, unfortunately. And it's, it's telling when you see that. We've talked about, films of the past like Megalopolis, which, had a very bad history to it. And of course, it really affected things. And in the final product, it speaks for itself. It was the worst thing I saw last year. Other pieces like Joker too, with all the financial stuff there of how much money was being poured into it, and stuff to me like that is interesting. So when I bring up this topic, I bring it up because I find it financially interesting, and yes, there may be a smidget of a political conversation in here, but I will try my best to not get into that because I know that it's easy to fall into it, but I kind of want to make it kind of clarify on this whole thing because I feel like there's a misconception as to what this actually is. So we're talking about Hollywood's recent efforts or recent, I guess you could say, changes to DEI related programs. Now, if you guys are not familiar with what DEI programs are, they are essentially diversity programs that help to provide inclusion and diversity towards minority groups, so that of black communities, LGBTQ members, and etc., women, all that stuff, people that they deem to fall into such a minority group, and just broader strokes of just discussions of minority groups, giving them a voice essentially. And President Trump has signed an executive order to abolish all the DEI-related programs, and Hollywood, it seems, has started to do away with those programs, which is very, very interesting because of how Hollywood is politically speaking. They are very, very pro-left, and for them to do such a thing, it's very interesting. So I did read a little bit of the Variety article. I won't get too deep into it just because it gets into a lot of political discussions. But to name some of the companies, Amazon pulled back a few weeks ago, and then it was I forget, there was like another company recently that did this, but the most noteworthy one, and frankly kind of the little bit of a surprising one, is actually Disney. Disney themselves have actually pulled back on the DEI related stuff. And I'll read a snippet of it here. Where is it? Yeah, it's right here. So it says on the Variety article, quote, the Comcast experience isn't one other media conglomerates want to repeat. Among the companies changing their approach to DEI are the Walt Disney Company, which recently announced it was ending Reimagine Tomorrow, an initiative intended to promote stories from underrepresented communities. And it's not alone. Amazon, as I just talked about, just last week, Paramount and WBD, which means Warner Brothers, walked back programs that embedded DEI in hiring and promotion practices. So in that paragraph right there, I think it's pretty telling as to, what is happening here, because some people I think are going to exaggerate this and say like, oh, this is going to change the landscape of how Hollywood tells their stories, and it's going to be this and that, and everything's going to turn into a certain line of thinking and all that stuff. I hate to break it to you guys, but that's not what's about to happen here. Really what has happened here is that they're changing the hiring process, and they're taking away the DEI stuff that was involved within in hiring and employment, taking away those standards, which, if you're asking me, which get to a little political for a second, it really is more racially motivated and more politically motivated, and it's not in service or an interest to a corporation or to the standards of employment. It's just to bend the knee for individuals, and that's not appropriate in my eyes. And Hollywood is very much, for these sort of ideals and practices and all that stuff. And it's no surprise that they are embedded with all this stuff. But, I think that what it does do is that it actually provides a more diverse lineup of storytellers to voice themselves. And no, that doesn't just mean a white guy. I mean, it could be any person. It could be a black person, LGBTQ. It could be a woman, all this stuff. It doesn't mean that with these programs that those people are now excluded, because it feels like there's a misconception to that as well, where people are like now acting as if that no one can hire someone who's LGBTQ or all this stuff. It's like, of course they can. It's just that the practices and the standards now are more enforced, and it's not just squarely to do with just you specifically and your own personal life. It's actually to do with your qualifications, as a writer, as an actor, as a producer, as all these things. And I think that that's way, way better compared to just cherry picking, essentially. So, and that's what, the whole point of abolishing these programs is. It's to make it more fair. So, yeah, now, the thing that people have to realize with this is that it is not changing the attitude when it comes to storytelling. You see, the companies have, specifically Disney, they have made it known for many, many years that they operate a certain way, and they're not going to really change that. And that doesn't mean that with these DEI-related programs, now that they're gone, it doesn't mean that they are all of a sudden just not going to be telling those specific stories anymore. They still are going to tell those stories. They still are. And something like this did bring up a point to my head, or a question, is it possible that Hollywood could change? Is it possible that Hollywood moves in a different direction? And if we're talking squarely about this, with the DI stuff, obviously the answer is no, because as I've illustrated, this is just more talking about employment, but it hasn't affected the line of their storytelling, what they will take or not take. The CEOs, the companies, the producers in charge, all these big people, they still exist, and they're still going to take in the stories that they find the most appealing. And in their eyes, it's the stories that are more diverse, quote unquote, and more inclusive and all this other stuff. So it doesn't change that. It just change just who they hire on to tell that story. So, but I think that Hollywood is, even though they are now wanting to change, there is a transitional period taking place, specifically when it comes to the taste of film. It's changing very, very rapidly. Not too long ago, back in 2019, 2020, it was all about the superheroes, and we've made many videos about about the superhero genre and just the decline of it. And we're still seeing that today with Captain America, the new film that just came out, didn't do well at all. And we're probably going to see that again with Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four. And the reason for that is because audiences are just getting tired. They're just getting exhausted. It's like the same conversations people have when they discuss Star Wars. There's just too much of it, and there's a large fatigue that's forming from it, and there's a lack of innovation and a huge redundancy. And, in that, people are just getting tired. And we've also illustrated again about the pandemic, about the effects of that, how it affected the theatrical experience. I just remember, guys, the theatrical experience before the pandemic was a 90-day window. Now it's a 45-day window, and it's essentially up to debate, whether that's even a thing now, because there's films that will stay at the 90-day course, and then they'll take the 45-day approach. It essentially falls down to how it's performing financially.
So literally a day, or maybe the same day, I forget when I recorded this video that you're watching now, the raw footage that I did with it. This article actually came out. Now, excuse me that if you hear my cat running around, just because he's a little bit wound up and he needs to get to bed. So hopefully we'll get to bed here shortly. But this is interesting because this relates to our conversation about just how the theatrical experience has how it's become, and AMC theaters was pretty much the first people to really tackle um, some of these strategies that unfortunately have really put a damper on the theatrical experience. Um, and you see like quotes here, and this is them talking about trying um, to a certain format. Now, uh, there's some quotes here. I'm just kind of piecemealing the article, but it says here, quote, distributors, please focus first and foremost on the theatrical releases of your films. He pleaded in a bid to return to a 90-day window. Let's get it back to the way it used to be. Some other quotes from him. This is coming from the CEO, by the way, of AMC theaters. Again, sorry, my cat is really wound up right now. Um, but um, but but yeah. So another quote here. So quote. I sure hope we can introduce longer windows because I think the current industry experiment has failed, which is very ironic given the fact that his company, and I believe it was Universal Pictures, kind of led the charge on that. I mean, Warner Brothers took the wheel, but the origin point to it was Universal Pictures and AMC theaters with um, their own experimentations. So it's funny, ironic how he says that. He says this when reminding that before the pandemic, most films in the U.S. weren't available in the home at least 74 to 90 days after their initial theatrical release, which we've discussed. That was a thing, but now it's not. Um, what Aaron did mention was that it was actually AMC, so Hollywood Reporter, they're checking them. What Aaron didn't mention was that it was actually AMC that first struck a landmark deal with Universal in the summer of 2020, collapsing the window to 17 days for a movie opening to $15 million or less. Sorry, she just jumped on me. To $50 million or less, and 31 days for a title opening to more. Universal, owned by Comcast, has long wanted to experiment with a new premium VOD window, whereby a title is offered for rental price of $20 or more. I don't recall Universal doing this. I know Disney did this at some point. You remember the whole Mulan thing? Remember how they charged you like $30 to watch that film on top of the streaming numbers? Yeah, that was silly. Um, the pack became the new norm in large measure, although most studios hold out for more than 40 days. It all depends on how a film is performing. In particular, Disney, save for a few titles, has remained committed to an exclusive 60-day window. Aaron declared on the earnings call that a 45-day window should be sacrosanct. I don't know how the hell what that is. Probably basically blasphemy. And that, quote, 17 days and 30 days are just too short. They are. He added that he'd like to consider 60 days or more. Sources tell the Hollywood Reporter that the AMC chief has met with at least 3 of the 5 major studios, but many aren't eager to return to the past practices. That ship has sailed, says one studio executive. And the reason for that is very, very clear. It's just because we are in a very different age now where streaming is taking the wheel, but at the same time also dwindling. And people are just not as eager to come to the theater because there isn't a compelling argument to go and spend as much money as you're spending and getting less of a return because of what's out there right now in terms of quality. So, yeah, that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad. But again, very, again, telling of just the current state of things. So it's just very, very telling.
If it's doing fine, we'll extend it. If it's not doing too great, then let it ride out the 45 days. And people have caught on to that, and that's why people don't go to the theater as often, because they don't see the need to when films most times just pop up on streaming. And with that mentality, they are going to get what they want, because if they're not going to the theater, films aren't performing well, hence they will arrive earlier on streaming platforms. So consumers are getting a better deal by just staying at home, So, but with that, there are changes that need to be made. And those changes, as we've illustrated, are financial changes, needing to scale back. There's so much money that gets poured into these projects, specifically these big tentpoles, these superhero things, and it's not sustainable anymore. We need to dial it back pretty extensively. Or what I've said for a while is that maybe another genre needs to take center stage, and I really think it's going to be horror. I think horror is definitely going to be the next thing. 2 out of the 4 films so far this year that have made money are horror films: Presence and The Monkey. I mean, it's evident that, and when you look at the opposite to that, there's other tentpoles that have triple digits, big superhero extravaganza, stuff like that, and they don't make their money back. And with small stuff like that, Presence and The Monkey, they're like tiny budgets, $5 to $10 million. Like, that's great. That's great, because you also have to judge the theatrical experience today. It's not the same. There's less people coming to the theater. So why is it that Hollywood thinks that if you spend more or still spend the same way you did back then, back in like 2019, 2018, that somehow, some way that's going to be, that's going to work? Because I don't buy the conversation anymore about, oh, well, it's the pandemic, we had to delay a film and it cost all of this money, and or its delays created that big increase. I just don't buy that anymore. We're about 5 years out from the pandemic, so I don't think at this point we have that excuse. I just don't think so. I think it has more to do with just incompetence and just, studios believing that these films require as much money. They don't, or feeding into directors' demands, as we saw with Todd Phillips with the Joker film. Like, no, there needs to be better practices. There needs to be an understanding of the landscape that we're in, because even though Hollywood themselves doesn't want to change, they're going to have to change at some point. This is not a negotiable, sorry, what I'm trying to say? Like, this isn't a negotiation. This is an imminent thing, and they have to adapt to it. And, the DEI related stuff, that's more of a political thing, just how it's affecting, political, wise, that's them just ultimately bending the knee just so that they don't get caught in a web of lawsuits and stuff like that. And, obviously, personally for me, in a certain political view, I find this to be a good thing and not a bad thing. Obviously, a lot of you will probably find this a bad thing. I find it to be a good thing. I think it's actual fairness this time around, but the mentality of Hollywood has not changed. And will that mentality change? It will, but not by their own accord. It's going to be from big losses and huge, substantial financial loss. That's what motivates Hollywood is money. So when they don't see the money, that's what's going to start clicking in their heads that, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't pour $200, $300 million into a superhero film. Maybe we shouldn't just literally pour anything at this point, $200 or $300 million. Maybe we do have to scale back. Maybe we just have to do that, And I'm telling you guys, horror is just perfect right now. Horror is just in a great, great spot with these very small little production cost, $10, $20 million. Look at the Smile series. They're doing fine. A Quiet Place is doing fine. Conjuring's been doing fine for almost like a decade now. Like, these series have life in them because they do not pose many risk because of how low they are in terms of a financial investment. That should extend further to other series, or just completely just cave into the horror and just allow that genre to take center stage, because I think financially speaking, it's so much more of a benefit than pouring $200-300 million into the next Avengers movie, I just don't think so. Or into the next Star Wars film, So, and just because of one or two films prove to have an audience, that doesn't mean that the general genre is all of a sudden saved. Just because Deadpool Wolverine did well does not automatically mean that all these other films over here are going to do well. Again, Captain America as an example. Doesn't mean anything. The fatigue is real, guys. It's absolutely real. And the studios, I feel, are slowly getting that awareness. They're slowly getting it. But it's going to take this year and probably next year for them to finally click in their heads that, we need to make some big changes. We need to stop pouring so much fucking money into these projects, and we need to really, really measure what is literally out there. Who is showing up to the theater? They need to think about stuff like that. How many people are showing up? Not as many, as evident by the box office, So I think that the answer to that question is more that they are going to be forced to change, not that they are actually capable of changing. With the DEI stuff, right? It wasn't them who wanted to change it, because I've heard some people say that online, or saw comments about that saying that, oh, well, these companies never wanted these DEI related programs. It's like, I get what you're saying, because they're saying it's more of a financial benefit, I guess. But again, it took President Trump and an executive order to ultimately remove them. It was a force. It was get those out, or else lawsuits will be laid out for you. And they were like, okay, I guess we're just not going to have these anymore. It's that type of dynamic that ultimately pushes Hollywood in a certain way. It's not them who does it themselves. It's either us or someone else that's going to push them in a different direction. So, but yeah, I've always said I think that we are going to be, we are definitely in a transitional period right now. Hollywood may not see it, but definitely we are in a transitional period right now. I guarantee you in the next 5 years, we're going to be in a very, very different place when it comes to film. I don't know how the theatrical experience will be in 5 years, but I certainly know that the taste of film is changing. We're definitely hitting into a different place, and I bet you anything it's horror. I know it has to be, because of just how accessible it is, just in terms of just a friend group. I think horror is just so much more accessible compared to superheroes nowadays. And like I said, it's cheaper. It's just financially so much more better compared to pouring $200-300 million into the next whatever Marvel DC thing. So, but you guys let me know. Do you guys think that Hollywood is capable of change? Do you guys think that their change is imminent? I certainly think it is. And your thoughts relating to the DEI stuff. Let's be neutral on this. And again, keeping it all in the vein of movies. Let's not get into like a heated political discussion. But you guys know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for the video. Guys, sorry. My voice just cracked out on me. Let me drink some water. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.